Shalom everyone to Living with the Times. This coming Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol, the Great Shabbos. It is the Shabbat before Pesach, and it's called the Great Shabbos. So let's take a minute and look at why is it called the Great Shabbos. So according to tradition, on the 10th of Nisan, the 10th day of the month of Nisan, which is 5 days before Pesach, God commanded while we were in Egypt to every home to take a sheep or a goat and to bring it into the house. And that was prepared for the 14th of Nisan, when we would slaughter this goat or sheep, and we would eat it at the Pesach Seder, but we would take the blood and we would put it over the doorposts and the lintels. And that was the sign that protected the Jewish people during the 10th plague, the killing of the firstborn. In the year that we came out of Egypt, so the 10th of Nisan was on Shabbat in that year. Other years, like this year, it is not necessarily, but it was on the 10th of Nisan. But because the first time it was on Shabbat, so this Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol, because it was in preparation for coming out of Egypt. Another reason that we're told is that even though it's very, very common for the rabbi of a shul, a synagogue, to give a talk every week, there were 2 times of the year where the rabbi gives a big drush, a drush gadol, a long speech in preparation for the laws of Pesach and in the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It was also customary for the rabbi to give a inspirational talk about the importance of doing tshuva, of repenting and being prepared for Yom Kippur. And the third reason is that every week we read what's called the Haftorah, a reading from the books of the prophets. And on Shabbat Hagadol, the Haftorah ends with God saying that he will send Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day. And that's why we have, according to tradition, that before Mashiach comes, first Elijah the prophet will come and pave the way for Mashiach to come. And so since the end of this Haftorah that we read right before Pesach is that Elijah the prophet will come before the great Gadol and awesome day, so this Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol. So let's go back, this idea of taking the sheep and the goat into the house and the purpose for this. So in Egypt at the time, they worshipped these animals. It was as if Israel was taking their gods into the house. And the Midrash says the Egyptians came and said, "What are you doing with these animals?" And they said, "God has commanded us to take them, and we're going to slaughter them and be prepared to go to freedom." So you can imagine this is pretty dangerous. These were the gods of Egypt. And so it's explained. So why did God command us to do this? He could have just said, on the morning of the 14th day of Nisan, take a sheep or goat and slaughter it and take the blood and then eat the animal at the Pesach Seder. That's what's called the Korban Pesach. So the answer that is given is God wanted us to exhibit what's called Mesirut Nefesh, a willingness to give everything. In other words, we're about to come out of Egypt, and it will take a lot of faith after such a long time in slavery just to pick up with whatever we can, put on our back. We put the dough on our shoulders, so we didn't have time for the bread to rise, and to go out into the wilderness, into the unknown. It took a lot of faith. And to do that, we need Mesirut Nefesh. We have to be willing to follow through with our faith, to give it our all. And so that's what God wanted from us. God wanted us to, in a sense, put our trust on the line, our faith on the line. So it should be pointed out, it's very interesting that if you look at the year, it's like a 360-degree circle. So directly across from the 10th of Nisan is the 10th of Tishrei. The 10th of Tishrei is Yom Kippur. And so we have a deep connection between the 10th of Nisan and Yom Kippur. It's interesting that these are the two times of the great speech from the rabbi is connected to these 2 days because they're two very high points in the year. And so on a deeper level, what is the connection? So we know that on Yom Kippur, we fast, we don't drink, we don't wear leather shoes, we don't bathe, no marital relations. So we have, in a certain sense, a Mesirut Nefesh from a bodily point of view. Especially in our day, we're not used to fasting, especially for a whole 24 hours. And during those 24 hours, most of it is praying, and praying very intensely. So there's a very deep Mesirut Nefesh connected to Yom Kippur as well. And they're directly across from each other on the circle of the calendar. And so this is very, very relevant to today, that after, I'll just speak for myself and my generation. We grew up in America, and we hardly even knew what the word anti-Semitism means. We were in a golden age. In the early 1900s, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in America. I'm just using America as an example. It's true in many, many other Western countries as well. That until the 40s or 50s, there was still a lot of anti-Semitism. A lot of it was very subtle, but it was there. But when we grew up in the 50s and 60s and 70s, hardly even knew what the word meant. Now things, unfortunately, are going back to the usual pattern of Jewish history. And here we are, we're back in Israel. We've built an incredible country, a cutting-edge country. Really the engine that's driving so much of the technology in the world is coming out of Israel now. And so here we're again, because of this, the whole situation in the world and the war in Israel, we're again in a state of Mesirut Nefesh. To be Jewish is not an easy thing right now. And so we're hoping that our Mesirut Nefesh, just like it was needed to get out of Egypt, when we went from slavery to freedom, that right now we're so close to redemption. We're back in Israel. We've rebuilt in a cutting-edge society. We're the center of the world now. And so hopefully with our Mesirut Nefesh and our love for God, our love for Israel, love for Torah, love for the land, that this will push us over the line to a true and complete redemption.